The great dining hall of the Kethvari Palace could hold 500 guests. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. The walls were made of polished black stone that reflected light like dark mirrors. Gold decorations covered every corner. The table in the center stretched longer than most human houses, but every night, only one seat was filled. Queen Velshara sat at the head of the enormous table. Her scales were the color of deep purple mixed with silver. Two massive wings folded against her back. Her horns curved backward like ancient crowns. She was beautiful in the way that storms are beautiful. Powerful and distant and alone, the servants brought her food in silence. They placed golden plates before her and stepped back quickly. No one spoke to the queen. No one had spoken to her in a very long time. It was not because they feared her anger. It was because she could not hear them. 300 years ago, Queen Velshara had led her armies against the burning empire. The final battle had been won, but at a terrible cost. An explosion of dark energy had destroyed her hearing completely. The healers tried everything. The scientists built machines. The mystics performed rituals. Nothing worked. At first, people tried to communicate with her through writing. But the queen was proud. Reading tiny words on paper while others watched felt shameful to her. She hated the pitying looks. She hated the slow, awkward conversations. Most of all, she hated feeling broken. So she stopped trying. The advisors learned to send her written reports. The generals communicated through official documents. The queen ruled her empire through papers and messengers. And she ate alone. Every single night. Because sharing a meal meant pretending to understand conversations she could not hear. Tonight was no different. Velshara cut her food slowly. She did not taste it. She never tasted anything anymore. Eating was just something her body needed. The joy had left long ago. Through the tall glass doors of the dining hall, she could see the hallway beyond. Servants walked past sometimes. Guards stood at their posts. None of them looked at her. They had learned not to. But tonight, something was different. A small shape appeared at the glass door. It was tiny. Much too small to be a servant or guard. Velshara's ancient eyes focused on the figure. It was a human child. The child had black hair cut short around her ears. She wore a simple dress that was slightly too big for her. Her face was pressed against the glass, and her breath made little clouds on the surface. She was staring at Velshara with huge, curious eyes. Velshara blinked. In her 3,000 years of life, she had seen many things, but she had never seen a human child look at her like that. There was no fear in those small eyes. No worship, no disgust, just pure, simple curiosity. The child waved. Velshara did not move. She did not know how to respond. People did not wave at queens. People bowed. People trembled. People looked away. They did not press their faces to glass and wave like she was a friend. A moment later, a human man appeared. He grabbed the child's hand and pulled her away quickly. His face was full of fear. He bowed toward the glass doors even though Velshara was far away. Then he disappeared around the corner with the child. Velshara sat very still for a long time after that. The next morning, she called for her head of staff. A tall Kethvari named Lord Drenvok entered her chambers and bowed deeply. He carried a writing pad, ready to receive her written commands. Velshara wrote quickly. There was a human child in the palace last night. Explain. Lord Drenvok read the note and wrote back. My deepest apologies, Your Majesty. The human janitor Teho could not find care for his daughter yesterday. He brought her to work. It will not happen again. He has been warned. Velshara read the response. Then she wrote. The child's name? Lord Drenvok looked surprised. He wrote, Yuna. She is 7 years old. Velshara nodded slowly. She dismissed Lord Drenvok with a wave of her claw. That night, she ate dinner in the great hall as always. But this time, her eyes kept moving to the glass doors. She did not know why she was looking. The janitor had been warned. The child would not come back. But Velshara looked anyway. An hour passed. The food grew cold on her plate. The servants waited nervously, wondering why the queen had not finished eating. Then, just as Velshara was about to give up, she saw it. A small face appeared at the glass door again. Yuna was back. This time, the child did not just wave. She held up a piece of paper. On it, she had drawn a picture with colored pencils. It showed a purple dragon with silver spots sitting at a big table. Next to the dragon was a tiny stick figure with black hair. They were both smiling. Above the picture, in messy child's handwriting, it said, Kai. Velshera felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize the feeling. It had been so long. She was smiling. Before she could react, Tejo appeared again. His face went white when he saw his daughter at the forbidden doors. He grabbed Yuna and picked her up. The child's drawing fell to the floor. Tejo bowed frantically toward the dining hall, his whole body shaking with fear. Velshara stood up from her chair. The servants gasped. The queen never left dinner early. She never moved quickly. But now, she was walking toward the glass doors, with purpose in her steps. Tejo saw her coming and fell to his knees, pulling Yuna down with him. He pushed the child's head down in a bow. His lips were moving rapidly. He was begging. Velshara realized, begging for forgiveness, begging for mercy. She could not hear the words, but she knew what fear looked like. Velshara stopped at the glass doors. She looked down at the trembling man and the confused little girl. Then she bent her massive body and picked up the fallen drawing. She studied it carefully. The purple dragon. The tiny human. The word, Hi, written with such effort. It was messy and imperfect, and absolutely wonderful. Velshara looked at Yuna. The child was peeking up at her, despite her father's attempts to keep her head down. Those big, curious eyes were watching the queen without any fear. Velshara did something she had not done in 300 years. She waved back. Yuna's face lit up with the brightest smile Velshara had ever seen. The child waved again, faster this time, bouncing with excitement. Tejo looked up in shock. He stared at the queen, then at his daughter, then back at the queen. He did not understand what was happening. Velshara reached into her robe and pulled out a small golden coin. She pressed it into Tejo's shaking hands. It was a queen's favor, a sign that no punishment would come, a sign that he was protected. Then she turned and walked back to her table. But before she sat down, she carefully placed Yuna's drawing next to her plate. And for the first time in centuries, Queen Velshara finished her entire meal. She was still alone. But somehow, she felt a little less lonely. Tejo could not sleep that night. He lay in his small room in the servants' quarters and stared at the ceiling. His hands still trembled when he thought about what had happened. His daughter had approached the queen. His 7-year-old child had walked up to the most powerful being in the Kethvari Empire and shown her a drawing. Anyone else would have been executed. Anyone else would have been thrown in prison. But the queen had waved back. She had given him a golden coin of protection. He did not understand. Appa, Yuna whispered in the darkness. She slept on a small bed next to his. Is the dragon lady nice? Tejo swallowed hard. She is the queen, Yuna. We must respect her. But is she nice? He thought about the ancient creature with purple scales and silver markings. He thought about the sadness in her eyes. He thought about the way she had picked up Yuna's drawing so carefully. I think she might be, he finally said. Now, sleep. But Yuna was already asleep, dreaming of dragons. The next day, Tejo worked harder than ever. He scrubbed floors until his arms ached. He polished windows until they sparkled. He wanted to show that he was grateful. He wanted to prove that he deserved the queen's mercy. He kept Yuna close to him all day. The child helped him carry his cleaning supplies. She talked constantly about everything she saw. The tall ceilings, the strange paintings, the alien servants with different colored scales. Appa, why does the dragon lady eat alone? Yuna asked, while Tejo cleaned a long hallway. She is the queen. Queens are very busy. But eating alone is sad. Grandma used to say that food tastes better with family. Tejo felt his chest tighten at the mention of his mother. She had passed away 2 years ago. Yuna still talked about her often. Grandma was very wise, he said softly. Grandma was deaf too, Yuna said. Like the dragon lady. Teho stopped cleaning. He turned to look at his daughter. How do you know the queen is deaf? The other servants talk about it. They say she cannot hear anything. That is why she is always alone. Yuna tilted her head. But Grandma was deaf. And she was not alone. We talked to her with our hands. Teho felt his heart skip. His mother had been deaf since birth. The whole family had learned sign language to communicate with her. Yuna had learned before she could even walk. She still practiced sometimes, signing to herself when she was bored. Yuna, Teho said carefully. The queen is not like Grandma. She is royalty. We cannot just walk up to her and sign. Why not? Because, Teho struggled to explain. Because there are rules. Rules are stupid if they make people lonely. Yuna said simply. Teho opened his mouth to argue. But no words came out. Sometimes his daughter was too smart for her own good. That evening, dinner time came again. Teho was cleaning the hallway near the great dining hall. He made sure Yuna stayed far from the glass doors. He did not want to test the queen's kindness twice, but when he turned his back to empty a bucket of dirty water, Yuna slipped away. The child moved quietly down the hallway. Her small feet made no sound on the polished stone floor. She reached the glass doors and pressed her face against them. Just like before, Queen Velshara was sitting at her table. Her food was untouched. She was staring at something on the table next to her plate. Yuna realized it was her drawing. The queen had kept it. A warm feeling spread through Yuna's chest. She pushed open the glass doors. The doors were heavy, but Yuna was determined. She squeezed through the gap and stepped into the great dining hall. Her footsteps echoed in the massive room. Velshara looked up. Her ancient eyes widened when she saw the tiny human walking toward her table. The child was alone. No trembling father behind her. No guards chasing her. Just a 7-year-old girl crossing a room full of golden decorations and crystal lights. Yuna stopped a few steps from the queen's chair. She looked up at the massive dragon with her curious eyes. Then she raised her hands. She moved her fingers carefully, forming shapes in the air. Her hands danced through motions she had practiced thousands of times with her grandmother. She was signing. Hello, my name is Yuna. What is your name? Velshara sat frozen in her seat. Her massive body was completely still. Her golden eyes were fixed on the child's moving hands. No one had tried to communicate with her visually in 300 years. No one had thought to try. Her people communicated through speech and written words. The idea of using hands to speak was foreign to them. But this tiny human was standing before her. Fingers dancing, face full of hope. Velshara did not understand the gestures. She did not know what the movements meant. But she understood something far more important. This child was trying to reach her. Velshara leaned forward. Her huge head came down close to Yuna's level. Most beings would have run away in terror. A dragon queen's face was not designed for comfort. Rows of sharp teeth, eyes like burning gold, scales that could deflect swords. Yuna did not run. She smiled. Then she pointed at herself and signed her name again, slower this time. She pointed at her chest, then made the sign for Yuna. Velshara watched carefully. Her ancient mind, sharp despite the centuries, began to understand. The child was pointing at herself and making a specific gesture. A name. She was showing her name. Velshara raised one massive claw. Slowly, carefully, she pointed at Yuna. Then she tried to copy the gesture the child had made. Yuna laughed with delight. The sound filled the empty dining hall like music. She nodded rapidly and clapped her hands. Then she pointed at Velshara and signed a question. She wanted to know the queen's name. Velshara understood, but she did not know how to answer. She did not know these hand signs. She could not spell her name with her claws, so she did something else. She reached for the golden plate before her. With one sharp claw, she scratched letters into the soft metal. Velshara. Yuna leaned close to read it. Her lips moved as she sounded out the letters. Vel. Sha. Ra. Vel. Shara. The queen nodded. For the first time in centuries, someone had spoken her name directly to her face. Not through a messenger. Not through a written document. A small human child had said her name while looking into her eyes. Yuna immediately began showing her more signs. She signed dragon by making her hands into wings. She signed big by stretching her arms wide. She signed pretty by touching her face and smiling. Big pretty dragon, Yuna said out loud while signing. Velshara is a big, pretty dragon. Velshara felt something wet on her scales. It took her a moment to realize she was crying. Dragons did not cry often. Their tears were precious things, said to hold ancient magic. But here, in this moment, watching a tiny, fearless child try to build a bridge across 300 years of silence, Queen Velshara wept. Yuna saw the tears. Her small face became worried. She reached up and patted the queen's massive claw gently. "Do not be sad," she signed and spoke. "I will teach you." Grandma was deaf too. I taught her many things. The doors of the dining hall burst open. Teho ran in, his face white with fear. 2 guards were behind him, their spears raised. "Your Majesty," Teho cried, falling to his knees. "Please forgive my daughter. She does not understand. She is just a child." The guards moved toward Yuna, ready to grab her. Velshara raised her claw. The command was clear. "Stop." Everyone froze. The queen looked down at the trembling father, the nervous guards, and the small girl who had not moved from her side. Then Velshara did something that would be talked about in the palace for years to come. She patted Yuna gently on the head, and she smiled. The guards lowered their spears. Teho stared in disbelief. No one knew what to do. No one had ever seen the queen smile at anyone. Velshara pointed at Yuna, then at the empty chair next to her at the enormous table. The message was clear. "Stay. Eat with me." Yuna looked at her father. Teho was still on his knees, still shaking. But slowly, he nodded. What else could he do? The queen herself was inviting his daughter to dinner. Yuna climbed up into the massive chair. Her feet dangled far above the floor. She looked like a mouse sitting at a giant's table, but she smiled at the queen like they were old friends. And for the first time in 300 years, Queen Velshara did not dine alone. The palace servants could not believe what they were seeing. Every evening, the tiny human child walked into the great dining hall. Every evening, she climbed into the chair next to Queen Velshara. Every evening, they sat together while the servants brought plate after plate of food. And every evening, the queen smiled. Word spread through the palace like fire through dry grass. The queen was learning hand signs from a human child. The queen, who had not communicated directly with anyone in 300 years. The queen who ate alone, ruled alone, lived alone. That queen was now spending hours each night with a 7-year-old girl named Yuna. Teho did not know what to think. He watched from the doorway each evening as his daughter taught the ancient dragon new signs. Yuna would make a gesture, then help Velshara copy it with her massive claws. The queen's movements were clumsy at first. Her hands were not made for delicate signs, but she tried again and again. Patient as stone. "This is how you sign food," Yuna would say, making the motion. "And this is drink. And this is thank you." Velshara practiced each sign carefully. When she got one right, Yuna would clap and laugh. The sound of the child's laughter in the ancient hall was strange and wonderful. The queen had begun keeping a book. She wrote down each sign Yuna taught her. She drew little pictures next to the words so she would not forget. The book was made of finest leather and golden pages, but it was filled with simple drawings of hands making shapes. "Your Majesty," Lord Drenvok said one day, his voice careful. "Some members of the court are concerned about your friendship with the human child." Velshara was practicing signs at her desk. She looked up at her advisor and waited for him to continue. Lord Drenvok shifted nervously. "They feel it is not proper for the queen to spend so much time with a servant's child. They worry about what the other empires will think." Velshara picked up her writing pad. She wrote slowly and clearly, "Let them think what they want. The child has given me something no one else has offered in 3 centuries." Lord Drenvok bowed. Of course, Your Majesty. I will inform the court. He left quickly, grateful to escape the queen's sharp gaze. That evening, Yuna arrived with a special surprise. She carried a small bag filled with colored papers. Today I teach you something important, Yuna signed. Her signing had become smoother over the weeks. She no longer needed to speak out loud while doing it. Today, I teach you feelings. Velshara leaned forward with interest. Her massive form cast shadows across the table. But Yuna was not afraid. She had never been afraid. This is happy, Yuna signed, making a gesture near her heart. This is sad. This is angry. This is scared. Velshara copied each sign. Her claws moved through the air, forming the shapes as best they could. When she signed sad, Yuna shook her head. No, no. Like this. The child reached up and adjusted the queen's claw position. She moved the massive talons gently, without any hesitation. See? Now try again. Velshara tried again. This time, she got it right. Good, Yuna signed with enthusiasm. Now you can tell me how you feel. How do you feel right now? Velshara thought for a moment. Then she signed carefully. Happy. Yuna smiled so wide her eyes crinkled. She signed back. Me too. The weeks turned into months. The seasons changed outside the palace windows. Snow came and went. Spring flowers bloomed in the royal gardens. Through it all, the queen and the child continued their lessons. Velshara learned quickly. Her ancient mind absorbed the new language with growing hunger. For the first time in centuries, she could express herself directly. She could ask questions and receive immediate answers. She could make jokes and see Yuna laugh. She could share her thoughts without the cold distance of written words. Tell me about your world, Velshara signed one evening. Tell me about Earth. Yuna's eyes lit up. She loved talking about her home planet. She told stories about blue skies and green trees. She described the ocean, which she had seen once when her father took her on vacation. She talked about her grandmother, who had taught her to sign before she learned to speak. Grandmother was very kind. Yuna signed, her movements soft and slow. She made the best soup. She could not hear, but she could feel music through the floor. We would dance together. You miss her, Velshara signed back. Yuna nodded. A small tear rolled down her cheek. She died 2 years ago. Sometimes I forget she is gone. I want to tell her things. But then I remember. Velshara reached out with one claw. Very gently, she wiped the tear from Yuna's face. The gesture was clumsy because she was not used to being gentle. But Yuna understood. Your grandmother gave you a gift, Velshara signed. She taught you to speak with your hands. And now you have given that gift to me. She would be proud. Yuna hugged the queen's claw. Her small arms could not fit around it, but she tried anyway. Velshara felt warmth spread through her ancient heart. Meanwhile, Teho watched from his usual spot near the door. He had stopped worrying weeks ago. The queen had given him a better position in the palace. He was no longer just a janitor. He was now officially titled as attendant to the queen's companion. It was a made-up position, but it came with a real salary and real rooms. Other humans in the palace treated him differently now. Some were jealous. Some were suspicious. But most were simply amazed that a janitor's daughter had befriended the most powerful being in the empire. Your daughter is special, a human cook told him one day. She sees what others do not see. Teho nodded. She has always been that way. When others see fear, she sees opportunity. When others see walls, she sees doors. The cook smiled. She gets that from her grandmother, I think. Yes, Teho agreed. She does. One evening, something different happened. Velshara was waiting in the dining hall as usual. But when Yuna arrived, she was not alone. Teho walked beside her, his face pale and nervous. There is a problem, Teho said, knowing the queen could not hear him but unable to stop himself from speaking. He handed her a written note. Velshara read the note. Her golden eyes grew dark. Her wings shifted against her back with anger. The note said, "The High Council has requested an emergency meeting. The matter concerns the human child. Tomorrow, at dawn." Velshara crumpled the paper in her claw. She looked at Yuna, who was watching her with confused eyes. The child did not understand what was happening. The queen signed slowly. "Do not worry. Everything will be fine." But even as she signed the words, Velshara knew the battle was just beginning. The council had been silent for months, but their patience had finally run out. They were going to try to take Yuna away from her. They did not understand what they were challenging. They did not know that Velshara would burn the entire empire to the ground before she let anyone hurt this child. The queen signed to Yuna, "Tomorrow, I must do something important. But I want you to know something first." "What?" Yuna signed back. Velshara formed the signs carefully, making sure every movement was perfect. "You are my friend, my first real friend in 300 years. Whatever happens, that will never change." Yuna smiled her bright smile. She signed back. "Grandmother taught me that." Velshara nodded. Then she signed one final thing. "Yes, they do." Tomorrow, she would show the council exactly what that meant. The High Council chamber was the oldest room in the palace. Stone pillars rose toward a ceiling lost in shadows. Ancient banners hung from the walls, showing the history of the Kethvari Empire. 12 seats formed a half-circle around a raised platform where the queen's throne stood. Every seat was filled. 12 council members sat in their robes of office. Their scales were different colors, showing their different families and regions. Some were old, their scales faded with age. Some were younger, eager to make their mark on history. All of them were nervous. They had summoned the queen. They were about to question her choices. Even with their power and positions, this was a dangerous thing to do. Queen Velshara entered the chamber slowly. Her purple and silver scales seemed to glow in the torchlight. Her wings spread slightly as she walked, showing their full size. She climbed the steps to her throne and sat down, looking at the council with cold, golden eyes. Lord Drenvok stood at the center of the half-circle. As the head of staff, he often spoke for the council in matters they were too afraid to address directly. Today, his hands were shaking. He began to speak, his voice echoing in the stone chamber. Of course, Velshara could not hear him, but she could read his written notes, which an assistant held up on a large board. "Your Majesty," the notes read, "we have gathered to discuss a matter of great importance. The presence of the human child in your daily life has raised concerns among the noble families." Velshara's expression did not change. She waited. Lord Drenvok continued, and the assistant updated the board. "The child has been seen eating at the royal table. She has been seen touching your Majesty directly. She has been given access to private chambers. These actions go against centuries of tradition." Still, the queen did not react. Furthermore, the notes continued, "The child's father is a common servant, a janitor. Allowing such close contact between royalty and the serving class sets a dangerous example. Other servants may begin to forget their place." A council member named Lady Vethras stood up. She was old, her scales nearly white with age. Her family had served the council for generations. She added her own message to be written. "We request that the human child be removed from the palace, for the good of the empire, for the preservation of our ways." Several other council members nodded in agreement. Velshara sat in silence for a long moment. The chamber was so quiet that everyone could hear the torches crackling. The council members shifted nervously in their seats. They had expected arguments. They had expected written responses. They had not expected this heavy silence. Then the queen did something no one expected. She stood up from her throne. She opened her mouth, and she spoke. 300 years. Her voice was rough and strange. She had not used it in so long that the sounds came out broken and uneven. But the words were clear enough. The council members gasped. Some of them had never heard the queen's voice. They had only known her as the silent ruler who communicated through papers and messengers. 300 years. Velshara repeated, her voice growing stronger. That is how long I have been alone. That is how long I have sat in silence, while the world moved around me. That is how long I have been trapped inside my own head. She stepped down from the platform. Each step echoed like thunder. You speak of tradition. You speak of the proper order of things. But what tradition? What order? The tradition of leaving your queen to suffer in silence? The order of pretending I do not exist except when you need my signature on your documents? Lady Vethras stood again, her old bones creaking. She held up a writing board with shaking hands. Your Majesty, we have always respected you. We have always served you faithfully. Served me? Velshara laughed. It was a bitter sound. You have served the throne. You have served the crown. But you have never seen me. Not once in 300 years has anyone in this room tried to truly reach me. She walked closer to the council, her massive form casting shadows over them. Then a child came, a 7-year-old human girl, the daughter of a janitor, as you are so quick to point out. And in a few months, she has done what none of you could do in 3 centuries. She has given me a voice. She has given me connection. She has reminded me what it feels like to be alive. Velshara raised her claws and signed as she spoke, using the language Yuna had taught her. This is how I speak now. This is the gift that child gave me, a way to communicate that does not require hearing. A bridge, across the silence. The council members stared at her moving claws in confusion. They did not understand the gestures. They had never seen anything like it. You want to remove her from the palace? Velshara's voice dropped to a growl. You want to punish a child for showing kindness to her queen? You want to take away the only friend I have had in 300 years? She stopped in front of Lady Vethras. The old councilwoman trembled under her gaze. Listen carefully, Velshara said. I will say this only once. Yuna is not going anywhere. She will remain in this palace as long as she wishes. She will eat at my table. She will learn in my libraries. She will have access to anything she desires. And if anyone in this room attempts to harm her or her father, they will answer to me personally. The threat hung in the air like smoke. But Your Majesty, another council member said, what will the other empires think? What will they say about the Kethvari queen being taught by a human child? Velshara turned to face him. They will say that the Kethvari queen found a way to break 3 centuries of silence. They will say that a human child succeeded where all others failed, and they will wonder why their own people never tried something so simple. She walked back toward her throne but did not sit. I have made my decision. The child stays. But I will go further. From this day forward, the language Yuna has taught me will be recognized in this court. All official communications can be delivered in sign language as well as written form. Any citizen of the empire who cannot hear will have the right to learn this language and use it freely. The council members looked at each other in shock. This was not just about one child anymore. This was about changing the entire empire. Your Majesty, Lord Drenvok said carefully, his words written on the board. Implementing such a change will take time and resources. Then start immediately, Velshara replied. I have been patient for 300 years. I am done waiting. She finally sat back on her throne. Her golden eyes swept across the council. Is there anything else? No one spoke. No one moved. The council members sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Lady Vethras slowly lowered herself back into her seat. Her old face was difficult to read. But something had changed in her eyes. Perhaps it was understanding. Perhaps it was shame. No, Your Majesty, she said, her voice small. There is nothing else. Velshara nodded. Good. This council is dismissed. The council members filed out of the chamber. They walked in silence, their heads full of everything they had witnessed. The Queen had spoken. The Queen had defended a human child against the entire council. The Queen had changed the future of the empire with a few words and a lot of courage. When the chamber was empty, Velshara allowed herself to breathe. She had done it. She had protected Yuna. But more than that, She had finally said what had been building inside her for 300 years. She had finally let the world see her pain and her hope. The doors opened one more time. A small figure slipped through the gap. Una ran across the chamber and climbed up the steps to the throne. She threw her arms around Velshara's claw, hugging it tightly. "I was listening," Una signed when she stepped back. "Appa was holding me outside the door. I could not hear your voice, but the servants told me what you said." Velshara smiled tiredly. "Then you know you are safe." Una nodded. Then she signed something that made the queen's ancient heart swell. "You were very brave. Grandmother always said being brave means being scared, but doing the right thing anyway. You were scared, but you did the right thing." Velshara reached down and gently stroked Una's hair. "You taught me how," she signed. "A brave little girl who walked into a dragon's dining hall with nothing but a drawing and a wave. How could I be anything less?" Una smiled her bright smile. Then she signed, "Can we have dinner now? I am hungry." Velshara laughed. The sound echoed through the empty council chamber. "Yes," she signed back. "Let us eat." And together, the Dragon Queen and the janitor's daughter walked out of the ancient chamber, leaving centuries of lonely tradition behind. 1 year had passed since the council meeting. The palace looked the same from the outside. The tall spires still reached toward the sky. The black stone walls still reflected the light of 2 moons. The guards still stood at their posts, silent and watchful. But inside, everything had changed. In the great hall, servants moved with a new kind of energy. They still bowed when they passed each other, but their hands were never still. Fingers danced through the air, forming words without sound. Smiles appeared on faces as conversations happened in perfect silence. Sign language had spread through the palace like a gentle wave. It started with the servants who worked closest to the queen. They learned so they could communicate with Velshara directly. Then other servants wanted to learn. Then the guards. Then the cooks and gardeners and stable workers. Within months, half the palace staff knew the basics, and it did not stop at the palace walls. Word spread to the city below. A way to speak without sound. A language created by humans, taught by a child, embraced by a queen. Deaf citizens who had lived in isolation their whole lives suddenly found themselves able to communicate freely. Parents of deaf children traveled from across the empire to learn the signs that could connect them to their sons and daughters. Schools were built, teachers were trained, books were written with pictures of hand positions and their meanings. The human sign language, as it came to be called, became the second official language of the Kethvari Empire. And at the center of it all was a 7-year-old girl who was now 8. Una had grown taller over the past year. Her hair was longer, and she wore fine clothes given to her by the queen. But her smile was the same. Her curious eyes were the same. Her fearless heart was the same. She still ate dinner with Velshara every night. But now they did not eat alone. Teho joined them at the table, sitting across from his daughter. Other trusted servants sometimes joined as well. The great dining hall that had once been silent and empty was now full of movement and life. "You are getting better at the complex signs," Una told the queen one evening. Her hands moved smoothly through the air. "Soon, you will be better than me." "I had an excellent teacher," Velshara signed back. Her claws had adapted to the language in surprising ways. She could not make all the delicate movements that human hands could make, but she had developed her own style. People called it the dragon dialect now. Teho watched his daughter and the queen talk. He still could not believe how much his life had changed. He was no longer a janitor. He was now officially titled as Court Advisor for Human Affairs. He helped bridge the gap between the Kethvari and the human residents of the empire. His work mattered. His voice mattered. All because his daughter had drawn a picture of a purple dragon and shown it to a lonely queen. "There is something I must discuss with you," Velshara signed. Her movements were careful and serious. Una looked up from her food. She knew that tone. Something important was coming. "The council has approved my request," Velshara continued. "If you and your father agree, I would like to make it official." "Make what official?" Teho asked. He had learned sign language too, of course. How could he not? It was part of their family now. Velshara looked at him, then at Yuna. Her golden eyes were softer than they had ever been. I would like to adopt Yuna as my ward, she signed. She would become a princess of the Kethvari Empire. She would have all the rights and protections of royal blood. She would be my heir. Silence filled the dining hall. Even the servants stopped moving, their hands frozen in mid-sign. Teho felt his heart stop. His daughter. A princess. Heir to the most powerful empire in the galaxy. But she is human, Teho said slowly. And she is my daughter. I cannot give her up. Velshara shook her head quickly. You would not be giving her up. You would remain her father. You would live in the palace with her. Nothing would separate you from your child. I am not asking to replace you. I am asking to add to her family. Yuna had been quiet through all of this. Now she spoke up, her small hands moving with careful precision. Why? She asked. Why do you want to adopt me? Velshara was quiet for a moment. Then she signed. Because you saved me. Because you showed me that connection is possible even when others say it is not. Because you gave me a reason to speak again, to hope again, to live again. She paused, her claws hanging in the air. Because I love you, she finished. Like a daughter, like family. And I want the universe to know it. Yuna looked at her father. Teho looked at his daughter. 1,000 words passed between them, without any signs at all. The way family communicates, through looks and feelings and shared history. Finally, Yuna turned back to the queen. Her small face was serious. Will I have to stop eating dessert first? She asked. Velshara blinked in surprise. Then she laughed. The sound was loud and free and full of joy. No, she signed, when she could control her claws again. You may eat dessert whenever you want. Yuna nodded firmly. Then yes, I will be your daughter. She climbed out of her chair and ran around the table. She threw herself at the queen, hugging her massive leg with all her strength. Velshara bent down and wrapped her wings around the child, creating a warm cocoon of purple and silver scales. Teho watched with tears in his eyes. His little girl, his brave, curious, wonderful little girl. She had done the unimaginable. She had befriended a queen, changed an empire, and taught a world how to speak without sound. And now she was family to a dragon. The ceremony happened 3 days later. The great throne room was filled with thousands of witnesses. Council members sat in their finest robes. Noble families displayed their colors. Servants lined the walls, their hands ready to sign the events to those who could not hear the speeches. Yuna stood before the throne, in a dress made of silver thread. It sparkled like starlight when she moved. Her hair was decorated with small gems. She looked like a fairy tale princess, except her smile was too mischievous for any fairy tale. Queen Velshara sat on her throne in full ceremonial armor. Her purple scales had been polished until they shone. The crown of the Kethvari Empire rested between her horns, heavy with the weight of ages. The ceremony was spoken for those who could hear, but it was also signed for those who could not. 2 languages, working together, weaving the same message. Do you, Queen Velshara of the Kethvari Empire, take this child as your ward and heir? I do, the queen signed and spoke together. And do you, Yuna, daughter of Teho, accept Queen Velshara as your guardian and protector? Yuna signed with perfect form. I do. Then let it be known throughout the empire and beyond. From this day forward, Yuna is princess of the Kethvari Empire, heir to the dragon throne, and beloved daughter of Queen Velshara. The crowd erupted in cheers. Claws clapped together, hands signed joy and celebration. The sound and silence mixed together in a strange and beautiful harmony. Velshara stood from her throne and walked down to Yuna. She bent low and placed a small crown on the child's head. It was designed for human size, made of silver metal with a single purple gem in the center. You look beautiful, Velshara signed. You look tall, Yuna signed back with a grin. The queen laughed again. She did that often now. Laughing, smiling, being happy. All the things she had forgotten how to do. That night, There was a feast in the great dining hall. But this time, the table was surrounded by guests. Humans and HFY sat together, eating and talking and signing and laughing. The room that had once held only loneliness now held community. Velshara sat at the head of the table, as always. But now Yuna sat right beside her, in a chair that had been built to match the queen's throne. Teho sat on Yuna's other side, his face bright with pride. As the feast continued, a servant approached the queen with a question. "Your Majesty, will you be dining alone tomorrow evening?" Velshara looked at Yuna, then at Teho, then at the room full of people who had become family. She signed her answer, and her voice followed a moment later, rough but clear. "No, I will never dine alone again," and she never did.